Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Space for Kentucky meeting. My name's Izzy House, and I'm the author of two space books, recently two space books, and a podcast, and I am a Kentuckian. It is a very exciting time for space. We just saw Artemis land and go around the moon and splash down successfully. James Webb Telescope is beaming back incredible images, and we have Perseverance and its tiny flyer ingenuity in providing sights and sounds of Mars, which is very exciting. We've never heard what Mars sounds like before. In the past 2 years, we have seen flights take civilians up to space with Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, and and Inspiration 4, and they orbited the moon for 3 days. We also saw Axiom 1 go up to their private astronaut mission to the ISS. What's coming up is Artemis 2 and Dear Moon this year. And both of them are going to be crewed flights that are going to go around the moon, which, in my opinion, this is going to change everything for space. And then we will see a woman of color step on the moon in 2025. All of these things are very public and exciting. In addition, in this decade, we will see several space stations come into operation and a supersonic suborbital aircraft take flight. It is a very exciting time for space, and we want Kentucky to be there. So we start this Space for Kentucky Roundtable to bring. The reason why we have this meeting is because Kentucky has some very cool space stuff, but it's kind of dispersed. So we want to have some place where everybody can get together, we can learn about space, and we can grow our economy and bring space to Kentucky. Each meeting, we have a theme, and this particular meeting is Jobs in Space, Present and Future. One of the myths that are out there is that space is only for rocket scientists. Even though scientists, engineers, and astronauts are jobs that are available in the space industry, there are so many more opportunities that range from chefs to lawyers to mechanics. We have 3 speakers here tonight who are going to tell us all about those jobs, and some that are more current and some that are in the future. Courtney Black is from the International Space Station. Jack Madley is with Ivona Staffing, and Lena Little is from NASA Langley Research Center. We will start the evening with Courtney Black. She is an education project manager with the International Space Station National Laboratory, and she is an ambassador, a solar system ambassador, a teacher liaison for the Space Foundation, a Space Center Houston SEEC crew member, and an educator member of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. And a little bit of my heart, she is also in the Civil Air Patrol. Next, we will have Ivona. Well, let's go. Sorry, reading a little bit too ahead. So, Courtney, take it away.
I'm going to have to change up my script a little bit because there are rock stars on this call that could probably expound and elaborate on what I'm about to present, but only better. If it wasn't for Casey Hines, I wouldn't be in the Civil Air Patrol or an AIAA member. We met back in 2017 at Space Symposium, and I was just a geeky teacher that loved space. And all of a sudden, this woman took me under her wing and said, do this, sign up for this. Casey is also the, I'm going to butcher your job title. She's in the classroom, but she's also the education program manager for Limitless Space.
Education director for Limitless.
Education director. I told you. But she's amazing. And Lisa's wonderful as well. She's one of our ambassadors. So when I thought about this evening, I kind of thought about what I wanted to say. I have a short presentation, and hopefully I can just kind of throw some ideas back and forth with everybody here tonight about what the future of space careers is going to look like, what it particularly means for Kentucky, and how we're going to be a part of that, and what we can do to promote and embolden this future space force. Well, not space force, but this future space workforce. All right, everybody see the astronaut? Give me a thumbs up. Excellent. Okay. So thank you so much, Izzy. I really appreciate you letting me be here this evening. My name is Courtney Black. I am an education project manager with the International Space Station National Laboratory. Kentucky has a very special place in my heart. My husband is from Kentucky. He grew up there. He went to the University of Kentucky, and thanks to the last 2 wins, we can proudly admit to that. We live on the Space Coast of Florida now with our 2 kids. I am a former formal classroom educator of 14 years. And like I said, before I went to Space Symposium back in 2017, I was just a geeky teacher that loved to teach about space, and knew that we had to inspire that next generation, because they are the answer to where we are going and how. So when most people think of Kentucky, and I'm sure you've heard this so many times, I'm sure the first thing they don't think about is aerospace. This is actually a picture that's in my husband's office. We got it at, for those of you that know, Claudia Sanders Restaurant. Only true Kentuckians will, but that was the original Kentucky Fried Chicken. And we purchased it from there, and it just really embodies what we think of when we think of Kentucky. We think of bluegrass, we think of bourbon. Well, some of us think of bourbon. We think of horse racing. We think of coal or music. Many of us think of basketball, but not a lot of people think of aerospace like they should, simply because of everything they do know. Whoops, sorry. Some of the statistics actually show that we should be thinking about aerospace when we think of Kentucky. They're the 2nd largest exporter of aerospace goods in the United States, just behind Washington. There are about 600 total companies, 79 specific aerospace companies that have offices or headquarters in Kentucky, providing about 20,000 jobs. This is an industry that continues to grow and grow in the state of Kentucky. Kentucky exported $14.6 billion in aerospace products and parts, which was a 16.4% increase from the previous year. Space means big business, and some of the biggest names in the business have offices in Kentucky. So what does it look like, and how are we going to get our students and young people not only interested in space careers, but trained for space careers? So in order to understand, I think, the future of space careers, we got to understand the past. And Izzy alluded to this so well, that when we think about the space industry and how it's changed, look at the Apollo era space careers. You had engineers, you had computers, and astronauts. And in the early years, jobs really revolved around just certain skill sets. And these skill sets were finite. Math and physics were needed to build spaceships. Military trained pilots navigated safely to space and to the moon and back again. And please don't misunderstand me. These skills were so important. They were doing things that had never, ever been done before. So this was very, very valuable. We wrote books and movies about the people that got us to space. They had the right stuff. They were the women behind Hidden Figures. And like the old adage goes, it's on their shoulders that we stand. So their accomplishments are very important. And I think that's why it's important to focus on those when we look towards the future. In our present day low Earth orbit economy, we have this beautiful orbiting laboratory that I get to call kind of my boss, as long as it's up there. I hope I have a job. And some of the careers that are involved have really taken shape because of the demands of living and working in space. We have astronauts that are doctors and teachers, scientists, and they're tasked with being mechanics when batteries need to be replaced or when solar panels need to be repaired. They conduct scientific experiments and test pharmaceuticals that greatly impact and improve the life of people on Earth. There are farmers that grow fresh vegetables because we know that to become a spacefaring species, it's not possible to constantly send these resupply missions. It gets expensive. It is timely. We can't get there quickly enough. So we're going to need to know how to grow our own food. The astronauts aboard the ISS and all the ground support that goes into successful missions, they fulfill tall orders. But as we look towards that next generation, the tasks are going to be even greater, especially if we're going to be a species of millions of people living and working in space. So in order to do this, in order to accomplish this, we have to figure out what is the new right stuff. When we think about the future of space careers, it brings about a lot of questions. A lot of things that we thought would be brand new industries are not necessarily new, but new in the way we look at them. For example, space agriculture. How do we grow food in the unforgiving environment of space or on the moon? Can we create carbon sinks that will result in a more hospitable environment on another planet? How can we mitigate the extreme high cost of feeding astronauts through continual resupply missions? These are all great questions, and they beg to be answered. And I think the answer is the future of space careers. We're going to have to equip students and youth to be problem solvers. And I think that is likely more important than any other skill that they're going to need or learn. Space hospitality, this is my favorite. With the announcement of Orbital Reef's business park, Space Hotel may be in our near future. And while the skills of career of hospitality are global, they probably aren't universal. Would a room steward in your space hotel require special equipment to navigate microgravity to come make your bed every morning? How would the chef at a space hotel create your meals or prepare your meals? Imagine floating in a high altitude balloon courtesy of Space Perspective, and your sommelier opens a bottle of champagne. Would it require the same technique? Would the carbonation be affected? These are all questions that I think about, and we don't know all the answers, but we're beginning to. And that's why the ISS is so important in order to provide that test bed. Space medicine. On the ISS, many astronauts are doctors, and they study capillary action and microgravity. And we know the field of phlebotomy takes on a whole new perspective when being practiced in space. We have space architects and construction experts. For centuries, humans have designed buildings and structures that withstand Earth's elements, and they can withstand high winds from hurricanes, or they can sway when the ground moves due to an earthquake. But how do we take these skills and design a spacecraft and structures that withstand the harsh radiation, potential debris, and myriad of other insurmountable obstacles that are sure to arise when living and working in space? So the questions seem endless, but they are important to contemplate when considering the future of space careers. But the real question we should be asking is, how do we prepare the future workforce for these careers? At the National Lab, we have a primary focus in this next year of workforce development. And one way we're looking to contribute to workforce development is our NLRA, which is our National Lab Research Announcement. We have a specific focus of workforce development, and especially those organizations or industries that are developing CTEs or career and technical education certifications. This is where we start, and we need to talk about the importance of workforce development. And this is to create, in part, promote, and fund programming that will equip the next generation. We've taken some important steps, but there are more steps to be taken. We have a robust STEM program called Space Station Explorers, where we work with 40+ different organizations to help educators and students leverage the science in space to have access to it in their classrooms and educational organizations. This is where we start, because we start here and inspire. We're awarding in that National Lab Research announcement $600,000 to 7 to 9 programs that aim to train and equip the next generation in the aerospace industry. I'll put more information about that in the chat, provide the link. If you belong to an organization that would be interested in applying for funding or access to the ISS, this is the only way to gain access. No, this is one of the only ways to gain access. You can also go through a commercial space provider that has a certain agreement with us through an RRF or resource request form. So if you're ever interested in either of those things, I would be happy to talk to you more about that. We also have a space station ambassador program. In fact, there are people on this call who were a space station ambassador before I was. This is a program that I help run, and this is basically to support educators by providing the resources and the tools they need to reach, teach, and inspire their students to pursue those STEM and space careers. We have sent hundreds of student experiments to space because we know when they have a part of something important, they know that their opinions, and when you involve students, that they matter. If they can have that buy-in in order to participate at a young age, when they go to choose a career, it is a natural fit. We find a lot of students that get to high school and say, oh, I really can't work in the space industry. If you would have told me as a high school student that I would work in the space industry someday, I would have said, you're crazy. You're nuts. I'm not that smart. I don't have that skill set. But when we talk about space careers, any career you have on Earth, any career that already exists will need to be replicated in space. We were talking about this at work the other day, and I was like, well, if I'm talking to people from Kentucky, people love the Derby, could we ever have a Derby in space? And and one of my team members was like, I don't know how we would ever get a horse to space. It's hard enough to get a human. And I'm like, well, maybe an embryo, and maybe there's going to be a space station that can simulate gravity and we can build a racetrack. She's like, I think we're a few years off from that. But these kind of problem solving skills and these questions that arise, I think, are so important to encourage students to start thinking this way. How do you see your place in space? So that is all I have for you today. I'm happy to answer some questions at the end, but I'm just really honored to be here. Thank you, Izzy. I hope to work with each and every one of you in some way in the future, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you so much, Courtney. And yes, everybody hold off their questions to the end. We're going to go through the presentations first, and then we will ask all three people, some of the questions. So next we have Evona. We have Jack Madley, which is a co-owner of Evona. He is a space sector recruitment agency, and they staff the space sector, connecting a global network of inspirational companies with exceptional people. They headhunt transferable skills from outside the industry and demystify the space sector to attract new talent, provide businesses we work with time to innovate, adapt, and shape the future of humanity. Thought leaders in recruitment and passionate STEM ambassadors, their mission is to inspire people to find their place in this exciting and fast-growing industry and learn that space is for everyone, regardless of their background. So take it away, Jack.
Thank you very much. Hopefully you can hear me, guys. That was a really fantastic introduction, Izzy. So you've outdone me there. I got to follow that up now and a little bit more about it. So thank you very much. And I think I'll just say that I really enjoyed that, listening to Courtney as well. Thank you for that. There's certainly some overlap, which I actually see as a positive, because it shows we're all on the same page. We understand what the potential is for the space industry, the space economy, space careers off the back of that, where people will be working in the future. So I'll follow on from what Izzy was mentioning, tell you a little bit more about Evona, a little bit about myself. Myself and three others set the business up in June of 2018 off the back of our passion for the space sector. And really, we wanted to build a business that was going to be the go-to talent partner for any scaling new space business. We've positioned ourselves to become the leaders across the US, Europe, and UK. We predominantly, although we're based in the UK, we predominantly assist US-based businesses find the best talent. And as Izzy says, we have a big focus. Rather than moving the chess pieces around the board, so to speak, of the space sector, we like to, what we call, raise the curtain on the space sector and really bring talent in. So that allows the space sector to actually grow, bring more people into it. Because at the moment, it is a very candidate short market. It's very positive in the fact that there's a lot of opportunity and growth within the sector, but it can't grow if everyone is taking people from everyone else. We need more people coming into the sector. And Courtney rightly said, a lot of it starts with the STEM piece, education. How do we bring more people in from the grassroots level up through into the space industry and the space economy? And as Evona, that's what we're all about. The name itself, Evona, it's the evolution of people. That's the actual name of the business. And we see for ourselves, we're biased, we're passionate about space, but we truly believe that this is probably the greatest market for the evolution of people, the next step, the next frontier for us. We have some main areas that we focus on within the space industry. So we cover space infrastructure, which is actually putting anything physical into space and the jobs that go around that, SATCOMs, and then Earth data. And I think that is a big piece, which I will go into in a bit more detail on the next slide, is that I think where a lot of the growth will be moving forwards is how we can use space for the betterment of Earth. Unfortunately, space has got a bit of negative press, I would say, recently from people who don't quite understand the benefits of maybe space tourism, space exploration. But those movements, that growth in that sector, will allow us to actually look after our planet in a better way and get a greater understanding of planet Earth. And we can go into that in a lot more detail. And there's going to be a lot of career needs and opportunities that come off the back of that. I myself, I am still based in the UK, but I'm looking to relocate to the States this year with one other Evona co-founder. We probably do 70 to 80%, as I said, of our placements with US companies. So we will be expanding Evona Incorporated out into the States as well. So hopefully we get an opportunity to meet you guys face to face and people on the call today. But I'll move on to a bit more of an overview of the new space economy. And apologies if I'm telling some of you how to suck eggs, but this is an overview of the space industry, which is what I think people see, which is obvious: rocket taking payloads, taking satellites into orbit. This is what we see on the ground, and this is what people associate with the space industry. But in terms of the wider space economy, it's what we do with the asset, the infrastructure, the data that then comes through from space, and what we do that. And some of the major growth areas that we're now seeing are in the likes of Earth observation systems. We've seen most recently with the war in Ukraine, the amount of insight that we were able to see in terms of that from a situation, from a defense situation. Earth observation was critical in identifying that. We're seeing massive opportunities now with space tourism, which is changing the game in terms of how we actually view planet Earth. I really think that's going to be a massive benefit. The more people that have the opportunity to see Earth and our blue dot, our pale blue dot, and see it from space, I truly think it will allow us to think more deeply about how we can protect planet Earth. Some of the things that Courtney mentioned already, medicine, food, nutrition, all this stuff is going to expand human capability and take us forward as a species. Some of it is a little bit more hidden. One of the facts I always like talking about is not everybody really knows or thinks about this, but the average person now, when they get up in the morning, by the time that they get to work, they'll have touched space 15 times in a 2-hour period, because so much now is reliant on data and what we are connected to, whether it be through your mobile device, through laptop or your computer, whatever it may be, the satellite navigation system within your vehicle. There's so many different points which we are connected to space, which I don't think people realize just the day to day. But there's certainly some very, very exciting growth areas. What we're seeing at the moment, at this point in time, is that the new space economy is still in its infancy. It's certainly not matured at a point where it's as established as the aerospace or defense industries, for example. But as we say, we're still seeing lots of design and development around new infrastructure, which we're still launching into space. But at the same time, then off the back of that, once those assets are in are in space. What are we doing with the data? What are we doing? What are we doing with the information which is coming down? And I can go through in the next slide some of the jobs which we're currently seeing before moving on to what we think we'll see the needs for in the future. So off the back of some of the infrastructure-led stuff, how we break it down kind of mirrors how we see the market in ourselves. So we're an organization of 70 people now at Ivona, and we mirror it internally in terms of the needs in the market that our clients come to Ivona to help, that actually need the skills, the types of people that they look for. We break it down into classic engineering, which is talking more about the space infrastructure side of things, anything physical that's actually going to space. So you're talking about electrical, mechanical, systems engineers, embedded software engineers, propulsion for spacecraft, mission development, mission operations, hardware engineering. They're the types of positions that we see right now that are in full demand within the engineering side. We've actually got 2 teams dedicated to engineering. And like I said, a lot of the new space economy and industry is in its infancy, and we're still in that build phase. So there's a definite need, an ongoing need to build out this hardware and infrastructure. So that's going to be consistent. We don't see that slowing down anytime soon. Something which is then, once we talk about the infrastructure actually being up there, we have our tech team, which then focuses on what actually happens with the information that's actually coming from the assets that we have in space. And off the back of that, the typical vacancies that we see, this is where you see your full stack software developers, your DevOps engineer, data specialist, insight analyst. What are people doing with the information that we're collecting? And the possibilities there really are endless. The amount of application that we now see from space data, what can be tracked to, it really is endless. And I'll go into the next couple of slides in terms of some of the areas of growth that we should see and some of the sectors of growth. But yeah, in terms of that, again, this is current needs. There's definitely a candidate shortage in this area as well. So this is one of those areas where engineering, some people within the space industry, they need that space industry experience, and they would typically, it might be difficult for a satellite builder to go and take someone from another industry and bring them in. They may need that actual satellite experience, for example. But certainly within tech and the final piece around business and sales and your more non-technical roles, they're real opportunities where, like I said before, we can raise the curtain on the space sector. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to be an astronaut. These are some of the opportunities you can bring in, and we believe the space industry is the most exciting industry to be a part of. And that's what we talk about there in terms of pulling people in from other industries and from other areas. And with that comes diversity, a more diverse workforce, and we know that certainly adds to productivity. So these are some of the roles that we currently see. As companies expand, as companies get more funding, as these companies move from pre-revenue into being revenue generating businesses, we're seeing a lot more of these non-technical business operations, sales, taking products to market. We're seeing a lot more of demand for that side of it as well. But again, just like to hit home to everybody that there's definitely a place for everybody in the space sector. And for those who are thinking about, where can we find, how can I be part of it? This certainly is a space. I've got some hints and tips at the end that we can go through in terms of, giving people the opportunity to go and find opportunities within the space sector. If we move on to future jobs, we've definitely seen certain sectors appear. Some, like I say, are still in their infancy. We really are on the bleeding edge in some areas, and there's certainly some groundbreaking new areas that are creating even more demand for jobs in space. But I think we can really break it down into the evolution of the current setup that we see and infrastructure that we've got. People are still building constellations of satellites. There's numerous companies all the time still springing up to build new constellations to give us more data and to connect the world globally. So if we look at the two areas, as you say, we can have a look at it as evolution of the existing space infrastructure and assets and businesses. And then the other side is, I suppose, a blue ocean style growth area where it's really at the bleeding edge, as I say. The types of positions where we feel in the future which are going to spring up more heavily. Legal is certainly an area which was quite quiet even 3-4 years ago, but we are now getting a lot more demand for people who can look after the assets in space. If there's issues with space debris, unfortunately, is becoming a problem. insurances, everything around the legal side of these assets and the companies within this, and how companies link together. Legal is certainly an area, and again, that's an opportunity to bring people into the space sector from other industries. Cybersecurity, again, in line with that, how do we protect these assets? A lot of the growth in that particular area that could fit in the growth side as well, because we're now seeing AI and machine learning fit in to how we actually control assets, but it's how do we protect those assets? And we're seeing massive growth in the cybersecurity part. And again, it's a very candidate short part of the market. Space degree, as alluded to, unfortunately, from the decades of putting stuff into space, we're now having to think of space as its own environment. Someone who Avona has spoken to heavily in the past is a gentleman called Maur Bouchard, who's actually currently with Privateer. He's very passionate about this and see it in terms of seeing space as another environment. And I think that's how we need to actually look at space now. But space debris is becoming a problem. So it's about how do we create sustainable assets in space? What happens at end of life? Can we refuel? We're seeing companies like Orbit Fab talk about gas stations in space. How do we look after the assets? How do we restrict the amount of debris that we create in space so we can look after it? That comes into the sustainability piece. It's the evolution, it's the maturity of the space sector to protect the assets and for future generations. Again, I've already talked about non-technical roles and business support. As these parts of the space economy evolve, we're definitely going to need to, bring more people in to support that. Technical SMEs and sales specialists that I talk about in the growth area. We actually need people to take these products to market, and so these companies can become profitable. I think, again, it's understanding how we can draw people in from other highly regulated sectors. We can look at medical device, we can look at automotive. There are certain people that can bring skill set to the table to take these products to market. And like I say, when we're looking forward, where we anticipate and what the companies that speak to us talk about, AI, machine learning, ChatGPT has exploded, and even in the last few weeks in terms of how people are using artificial intelligence. But it's how do we move the assets in space? There's a lot of companies springing into action now to actually use artificial intelligence and machine learning to move constellations, move satellites, move birds in the air. The biggest one I would probably say on here at the moment is that breadth of data application. With all the information now that we're streaming back to Earth, the possibilities of what we actually do with that and what we can learn from that data is endless. So data scientists, insight analysts, all that side of it, that is where we will see a massive explosion on, I suppose, the downstream side of the market in terms of the need for people to come into the space sector. And then Courtney touched on it massively. It is all about the next generation, but we actually need people to educate the next generation. So there's going to be jobs for people within education, specifically around space. There will be a time where hopefully at high schools, people at the early stage of their time in education will get the opportunity to do a dedicated space course. But we will need people to come in and enter the education system to teach and educate the next generation. Finally, from my side, is just hints and tips, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of getting into the space sector, because people, truly think sometimes, how am I going to get my foot in the door? But in this day and age now, with the amount of connection that we have, there are certainly a lot of things that we can be doing to get around and start educating ourselves in terms of what possibilities are within the space sector. Big things from us at Avona: keep an up-to-date resume at all times, so that you can't ever pass up an opportunity. LinkedIn is absolutely huge. I'm sure I'm not alone in terms of us as Avona utilizing LinkedIn to find candidates. So most companies will definitely be going to LinkedIn to find candidates. So making sure that profile's up to date and as full on as you can absolutely make it in terms of your interest in the space sector, stuff you may have done inside, outside of work, whatever it may be, space interest and activities. Getting it all together, LinkedIn is a fantastic place to connect with people and opportunities. LinkedIn as a whole, not just their profile, but connecting, following people, following influencers, if you like to call them, within the space sector. There's so much information that's out there that you can kind of broaden your horizons and start to get a good feel for what opportunities are out there. And you can scale a LinkedIn for the types of organizations that you'd like to join. Shows and conferences, thankfully, don't want to mention the pandemic, but now we're in a position, hopefully we can get people back together again. there's a lot of opportunities for shows and conferences. And as he mentioned earlier, it's almost at a point now where we can, where do we go? Like, which ones do we choose? So get out there, get your face amongst it. Webinars, videos such as this, educating yourself. Ivona, we're a space-only recruitment business, so you can engage with people like us. And then the final thing I would say is, if you're an entrepreneur, if you've got an entrepreneurial spirit, start connecting with people, funders, VC, private equity houses, etc., and other people who have set up their own companies to say, right, how do I go and do this myself? I think, the space sector, we know that we deal only with scaling startup and scaling space companies, and the entrepreneurial spirit, but the collaborative spirit that we see within space is second to none. I would say it's a fantastic place to be, and you will be supported if you want to go down that route. So yeah, I think I may have run over slightly, so apologies, Izzy, but that's some hints and tips in terms of what I would say is getting into the space sector. But obviously anybody can reach out to Ivona at any time, and we can talk through that in more detail.
Yes, and thank you, Jack. And I'm clapping because that's what we're going to be doing a lot more in person. So thankfully that we're getting out and about. All of the links and information will be located on space4kentucky.com. So, we're going to have the recording available after the meeting is over. It given me a couple of days to get it prepped and put onto the website. Next, we have Lena Little. She is a regional partnerships lead and special events coordinator, as well as a small business technical coordinator. She leads the development of the regional partnerships for NASA Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia, and Lena works in the Office of Legislation Affairs. Let me go ahead and share the screen real quick and get her presentation up. There we go.
Thank you, Izzy. Thank you so much.
Whoops.
So at
wrong
NASA
one.
Langley Research Center, oh no, you got it. I see it.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
That's perfect. Thank you. NASA Langley is actually 105 years old. We just had our 105th anniversary. We were the first NASA center. We were the founders of flight. We worked with the Wright brothers, Amelia Earhart. We developed commercial aviation from the ground up, and now we are working on some of the future endeavors in science, aeronautics, transformation, STEM engagement, and I'll talk to you a little bit about some of that as we go through here. But building on that foundation, we really do work to unlock all the secrets of the earth and the universe for the benefit of humankind, and that requires a very diverse workforce, people who have different perspectives that are united to reach a common goal. And we want to improve life for everyone here on Earth by working through getting to space and those big, bold challenges that you were hearing about from Jack and from Courtney. Next slide.
Oops, sorry.
That's okay.
There we go.
So like I said, we focus on 4 key missions. We work on science, aeronautics, space exploration, and inspiring the next generation. STEM engagement is a huge focus for us. We have tons of internship programs throughout the 10 NASA centers across the country. Those are paid internships, and they can be in a variety of areas. It doesn't have to be technical. I'm a non-technical person. You just need to have an interest in the technical work. But we have everything that you would have in a small city: a photographer, a firefighter, people who do graphic design. We have arts that design mission patches, and all of that goes into supporting the technical portions of the missions for earth science, exploration, and aeronautics. In science, we work to learn more about the Earth's atmosphere, about how our planet reflects sunlight, what drives weather and climate. And our researchers also do some science that supports the moon, Mars, and beyond. In aeronautics, we pioneer safer, faster, and more sustainable aviation by looking at new vehicles and also integrating unmanned systems into the national airspace. And in space exploration, that's the one that everyone's most excited about, because we are working on going back to the moon and beyond. And then in STEM engagement, we work with students, universities all over the country and in our region to inspire the next generation, build that workforce pipeline, and make sure that we have students ready to help us support our missions for the future. Next slide. Here you're going to see some of our regional economic impacts, and I think it's important just to show you our one NASA center of the 10 has a $5.5 billion economic output. That's huge. So you can, when you're hearing about Jack talking about the emphasis on space and how much it's growing, this is just one of the 10 NASA centers, and that's through the people we employ and our contractors. At our center, we have about 1,800 civil servants and 1,700 contractors. So you don't necessarily have to work directly for the federal government to be part of our campus, to live and work with us every day. And you can see how our budget breaks down there for space exploration, aeronautics, earth science, and transformation. And I'll talk a little bit about each of those. Next slide. One more. So in science, we really monitor the Earth's vital signs from the land, from air, and from the sea, and from space. And we work on some pretty ambitious campaigns. You can see our scientists working there to develop, measure, and understand the Earth. You'll see instruments on the left, Clario Pathfinder. Athena's in the middle. Those are using LIDAR. And then the one I really want to highlight is a launch that's coming up soon. It's called TEMPO. It's the Tropospheric Emissions Monitoring of Pollution. Sorry, I have a tiny little dog that loves to bark, so that's what you hear there. And this is going to help people with asthma, children and older adults. It will be able to take real-time measurements, hourly data that will feed into your regular weather apps that you look at every day and into the weather channels, so that you'll be able to know in real time whether you should maybe put off your daily walk, or if you want to go grocery shopping tomorrow because the weather's just, the air is just not going to be the best for you. Next slide. One more. So I talked a little bit about integrating the unmanned systems into the national airspace, but another new part of aviation that's emerging is the supersonic flight. So we once had the Concorde, which traveled overseas to England at supersonic speeds once it reached over ocean. But it is illegal to fly at supersonic speeds over land in the United States. And that's because it creates that sonic boom. It's not dangerous or harmful, but it's really annoying. It rattles windows, it makes dogs bark. And we actually have developed a plane that makes a quiet supersonic thump. So we are using not only technical researchers, but people who understand the psychology of humans and humans living on Earth, and how the difference of their lives in that sound. So we're surveying people out in the Galveston, Texas area while the plane flies over them to see if they're bothered by the sound that the new plane makes. So once legislation is passed that we're allowed to, that we can prove that we can fly at supersonic speeds over land without really bothering people, we'll be able to fly coast to coast in about 3 hours. So that's some of the ways that we're improving aeronautics. So now you're going to have supersonic planes flying at the highest altitudes, commercial aviation in the middle, and then underneath that you'll have personal air vehicles, and then underneath that you're going to have unmanned systems delivering packages. So this is really critical for us to demonstrate how we can safely integrate all of these things together in the national airspace. What new systems do we need? Cybersecurity experts, people to make sure that people are safe on the ground and in the air. And of course, people to build the vehicles themselves. And we don't focus on the manufacturing, we focus on the research that will get us there and what it will take to do that safely. Next slide. And then one more. And in space exploration, we build, fly, and land. So at NASA Langley, we specialize in entry, descent, and landing. And that means anything that flies through an atmosphere, whether it's on Earth or another planet, we do the modeling and simulation for what that will look like. So every robot that has ever landed on Mars has been done successfully because NASA Langley was involved. When you see those 7 minutes of terror when that vehicle's flying, the capsule has the robot in it, and it's flying at 17,500 miles an hour, the parachutes deploy, the heat shield comes off, and it takes those 7 minutes to land safely on the surface of Mars. That's what we've modeled without being able to prove it. It's really incredible when you watch the videos that they tell the scientists and researchers will say, this is what's going to happen. This is what it's going to look like. And then you get that real time footage of it happening and it looks exactly the same. I don't know how it happens. It's incredible. So that's one of the things that we do right there on the right where it says land. That's the Orion space capsule that you just saw come back from its trip to the moon. And we tested it at NASA Langley in a big giant swimming pool that we have to simulate its water landing back in the ocean. Next slide. Inspiration, and one more. So we engage, educate, and inspire students all the time. On the very far right, you'll see that is a winner from our art contest, our annual art contest. We just wrapped up the most recent one. It's a nationwide contest. The students get to submit from K through 12 their art and how they're inspired. We do try to work across disciplines, like I said, not only in technical fields, but you'll see in the middle there, that person is an educator and she does some videos that she makes for students to use. At the center, our population grows significantly in the summer, though we do have year-round internship programs. The summer is our biggest time. I personally have an intern every semester for the last 12 years that I worked at NASA. So that's a lot of students that I personally inspired, and we definitely encourage others to do the same. Some of them find that it's not for them. They want to do something else, which is just as important. And others have gone into a little bit about what Jack and Courtney have mentioned, which is what I probably would have done if I had done things differently: space law. I think it is incredible, a very new emerging field, because there are, in current law, there are precedents that you can base decisions on, judicial decisions on. You can say, well, this is what happened in the past and this law was created, but there is no precedence here. You would be crafting law from the ground up, really designing the future of space and how we will live and work together in a way that would be safe for everyone and fair for everyone and all the countries, and sharing this across the world, not just for our individual country. And I think that's really incredible. I think I have one more slide. Yeah, we always end on this slide because people are the most important to us. NASA, the agency, was voted as the best place to work in the federal government for 10 years in a row, and that's never happened before for any agency. And it really is because we are very people first. We employ people from all sorts of backgrounds, from all types of technical and non-technical disciplines, and that's really what makes us special. I'm happy to answer questions about how to find jobs in NASA or what kind of career you might need to start in to make your way into our workforce. And that's it.
Wonderful. All right, now we get to the questions. So I'm going to put it on gallery mode. And who has a question first? Go ahead and unmute, and there we go. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, my name's Steve Lugauer. I'm an economics professor at the University of Kentucky, and I'm teaching a brand new class this semester on the economics of space exploration, and super excited about it. It filled up right away. Students are excited about it. So my question's really to all three speakers, but Jack, maybe I'd start with you. The students have their ear to the street. They understand that the space industry is exploding. And you touched on it a little bit, how, the business students that I have, they're not engineers, but they have a strong math background. They have a data analysis background. How would students sort of at that level, they don't necessarily have any background in space, how would they go about getting involved in the space industry? Or if maybe now isn't the right time, is there sort of, a path that you might recommend that they take?
I think the first thing is, hopefully you guys can hear me again. I think it's really interesting. I think the big names come to mind straight away, don't they? Your SpaceX, Boeing's, various companies. Obviously, they're great places to attack as well and kind of drive after. But what I think the US as a whole has done something fantastic is come away from just these big companies all getting all the contracts, winning, the bulk of things. It really gets split out. The SBIR protocol, the bringing through the small companies, letting them have a piece of the pie, so to speak, winning those contracts. I would really say it's about opening the mind to the amount of businesses that are out there and the actual needs that they have. And the new space economy is growing day by day. Most of the companies that we recruit for are as young as Ivona is. When we started in 2018, most of the companies that we're recruiting for are younger again. And it's about trying to expand your mind to actually look at all those companies and think, look, there's loads of opportunities within those. Like I said, it is that thing of like, you might look at SpaceX and it's like they are focused on launch, launch and space exploration. That's quite a defined part of the market. There's much wider parts of the market. If someone's got a math background and wants to get into the data side, there are space companies that are purely focused in that. But it's LinkedIn is a really good place to kind of start with and actually just start tracking these companies. Companies similar to on the side. It's the big spider's web that you can kind of get into. And I think that was what I would suggest to start with. Get into LinkedIn, get the profiles going, show the interest levels, follow some interesting people, and those opportunities will start to appear. I think that's the good thing. Don't be hung up on the big names. Like I said, the big names are great, and you may get an opportunity to go and work for those guys. But there's a massive smaller companies out there which definitely need those people as well.
And just to piggyback off what Jack was saying, don't focus on the big companies, but also don't, if you're focused on economics, don't rule out Deloitte. They were one of the biggest sponsors of Space Symposium a few years ago, even though they're not a typical space industry. A lot of these big companies are starting space departments because they know that they're missing a sector of the market by not having a specialization in those areas. So look in those common but uncommon places for jobs. And just to echo what Jack said, and I work with a lot of educators that are working on, sadly, exiting the classroom. And I always tell them kind of the same thing. Get on LinkedIn, make business cards, go to conferences, even students. Like we have an ISS R&D, International Space Station Research and Development Conference that we hold every August. It'll be in Seattle this year. And we have a lot of college students that come to this, or they go to ASGSR and they have their resume and their business cards ready. So you never know who you're going to meet and where.
And plus, the growth of the countries that are actually participating. The last number that I heard, it was 77 different countries have space programs now. And that's countries that are feeding their industry, all the, and it just trickles down. And so I don't even know how many companies are in existence in space. It is growing all the time. And I think that, we can get some homegrown. We have some very good ones here. We have Space Tango here, and Redwire is not too far from here. So any other questions? Who's next?
Okay, I'll lower my hand. My name is Brendan Curry. I'm a space policy consultant up here in Washington, D.C. I did some time on Capitol Hill. I guess my question is for Izzy, but it kind of feeds into what Steve was talking about. Kentucky's lucky to have the Senate Minority Leader in representing them in the Senate. And just recently it was announced that Congressman Hal Rogers is going to be chairing the Appropriations Subcommittee that funds NASA. So that's really great for the state of Kentucky. And I was just curious, Izzy, what, if anything, does the state have planned? And Steve, how that kind of dovetails to what you're talking about, in addition to looking at the companies and things like that, states like Florida, Courtney will tell you, Space Florida, state of Alabama, Texas, Colorado, California, Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania are all starting to aggressively pursue space economies in their own way. Some of them do have federal assets, whether they have a Space Force asset in their state or a NASA asset in their state or a contractor base. And some, like New Mexico, have a spaceport Port America, where Virgin plans to operate out of. So it's a pretty rich environment for enterprising young minds to want to explore and check out. I would humbly suggest there's 2 free emails that your students can sign up for that come Monday through Friday. One is called First Up, and it's done by Space News, and it's just a recount of all the big space newsworthy events that happened the previous day. There's another one called Payload, which is a little bit more attenuated towards the up and coming or newish space activity going on. And they kind of showcase and highlight where the mergers and acquisitions are, and whereas the First Up, the Space News stuff, talks about more kind of Pentagon, NASA, more a little bit traditional space stuff. Payload, again, is a little bit more into the stuff that maybe you don't see every day. And Izzy is right. There are countries that you and I would all consider tremendously quite poor, spending precious time and resources on developing space capabilities for the betterment of their own people. They're not building space telescopes, but they're building or contracting to space companies to build them weather satellites or Earth observation platforms to help them with land use and agricultural needs, education, telemedicine, and also for sheer prestige. They're in, so many of them are pretty dangerous parts of the world, and they want to be able to lord it over their neighborhood competitors, peer competitors, that they are a space power. So there's some geopolitics involved as well. But Izzy, I'm just curious to see where Kentucky plans on, are you guys going to be doing a space day with your state legislatures or anything like that up in your state capitol? And
Yes.
I'll shut up for now.
We have an aerospace day that is that we've had for several years now. The governor proclaimed it several years back when we discovered that aerospace manufacturing was one of our big things. We were number 3 in the country, and we did a huge research project to really find out where we were. As far as Kentucky is concerned, we are a logistical dream. We are surrounded by river. We have more river ports than any internal state, and we have miles of river, and it leads to the Mississippi, which leads to the Gulf, so we can build in rockets and we can put them down along the coast right to Cape Canaveral if need be. That is something that we can do. Aerospace manufacturing is huge here. We have a lot of different companies that are big players. And I do know that State Director Robert Givens was my guest last month, and he is looking at trying to get a Space Force base here because we are right in the middle of some strategic areas, as far as Space Force is concerned. So we have a lot that we can offer as a state. And we are also going to be the leading manufacturer of batteries for electric vehicles. So that is a new thing that is working. And we have interstates galore that connect 34 different states. So are there some more questions?
Izzy, I didn't get to mention it, but we do have a partnerships program. I heard Jack mention SBIR, and we do work with a lot of small businesses to procure their services and their hardware, and also to transfer what we've invented for our mission work so that it can be commercialized by entrepreneurs in the market. And that's a really great way for students who are business minded and have that entrepreneurial spirit, but want to be in the space industry, to capitalize on the research that we've already done foundationally and take that and bring it to market.
Yes, spinoffs are amazing. Tempur-Pedic is here, which is a spinoff technology. If you sleep on memory foam, guess what? You sleep on something that came from space. So what are some next questions?
Izzy, I was just going to, less of a question, more of a comment. We also have the DSS-17 at MSU. I'm Dr. Jensen, professor at Morehead State University. I also have a small business, so I know SBIRs very well. But we actually do have one of the DSN stations right here in Kentucky. It's right on the Morehead State campus, and we're connected to the Deep Space Network. So for communications and for logistics, Kentucky is really a prime area that people can look to. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out, and this is great.
Morehead. Yeah, Morehead is like one of the leading colleges for small satellites. And they just had a payload that was on Artemis 1. So you want to tell us how all that happened? It's the lunar ice cube and was to detect water on the moon.
Yes, lunar ice cube was designed to detect water on the moon. Anybody from NASA on this call understands some of the things with Artemis, so I won't go into that with the CubeSat issues there. But yeah, we have a full facility here for producing CubeSats, and of course we've worked with Space Tango. Actually, the CEO of Space Tango was one of our graduates. So I personally, by the way, used to work for Redwire. So that's a ecosystem that a lot of Kentuckians don't even know exists. I think that we have to get that out to everybody to market it. So I'm glad that Izzy is taking that on to try to get the word out about what's the great things that are happening in Kentucky in aerospace. But yeah, we have something great here going, and I hope that we can encourage people and grow it even more.
And it's a wonderful state. It is a beautiful state, and it's right in a sweet spot. So there's a question about how we will engage Chairman Rogers, and that is a good one. And I will let you know how we plan to do that. This is the fourth of these particular meetings, and there's going to be a lot more.
Thanks, Izzy.
Any other questions before we wrap up tonight?
Izzy?
Yes, Lisa. Hi.
Hi. I'm one of the space station and explorers with Courtney Black, being a part of the Women Defying Gravity and several other programs that are wonderful through the International Space Station, National Laboratory. And there are many free programs that are available for our students, for our youth organizations. One of them that I really incredibly love is the Orion's Quest, which you can actually do true, authentic scientific research of a heart or stem cells on station, or just incredible things to help train and educate our students at a young age. And I've been doing this since 2019, and it's been incredibly life-changing to where things have transferred, like Lena mentioned from NASA, and I reached out to Lena because Langley is named after Katherine Johnson. So our marginalized communities, to get them invigorated as well and bring them in to understand that there are other organizations like the National Society of Black Engineers to help organize and structure their organized activities and after school activities. But there are, like the Katherine Johnson research facility that Lena was, alluding to. That is an incredible facility that there are free options. And there was the recent press release that the White House issued that across all agencies, NASA, NOAA, NIST, National Institute of Health, everything is open science, open source 2023. And it's something that really, I've been shouting this out since December. Get ready for it. Get ready for it. So a presentation that I delivered on January 14th, sometimes a picture goes a long
we
ways.
lost you.
So something that's not been discussed here is planetary science, and I think Dr. Jensen mentioned the Deep Space Network. Planetary Science Institute, we have discovered the first rocky exoplanet, LHS 45b. It is the new frontier because of the molecules and organic chemistry. And that is something with the Micro Observatory. Again, the Exoplanet Watch is free. Individuals don't have to have a telescope, but these are technical skills, gracious professionalism skills, and learning through a micro observatory from any observatory, whether it be in Chile, Australia, wherever. And these are things that are free that I really hope that we get support to help initiate that. And I'll leave that with that.
Well, awesome. Very good. That can be a subject of a future episode of Space for Kentucky Roundtable. So if you have any suggestions that you would like to see, please do reach out and let me know. And I want to share my deep appreciation with Courtney, Jack, and Lena for sharing their evening with us and letting us know all the opportunities that are in space. It is going to be amazing, and I cannot wait. So with that, we will call it an evening. Please do reach out and sign up for to keep getting notifications on spaceforkentucky.com. Thank you, guys.